Through my Airbnb experiences prototype. So essentially, uh, these are my kind of like first iterations. This is my additional iterations from A6. Um, this is kind of what I did for implementing the critique from session, and this is kind of like my high fidelity, version of my prototype with the style guides applied to it. So I'm going to be demoing it in Sketch, and I'm going to be starting from here. So essentially, you figured out which city you're going to be in, and you're kind of like, you have this default listing page, like that kind of gives you like listings without any filters or anything like that. So one entry point for my feature is obviously the filter portion of it, where it's kind of like this is kind of like Airbnb's basic filter right now, and everything's kind of pertaining to homes and figuring out homes first, like amenities and like parking stuff like that, and beds and stuff like that, necessities. And then under amenities, you kind of have like lifestyle necessities, where it's like what's important is transportation, subways, bus stops, but another thing is kind of like restaurants and like shopping outlets and supermarkets and ATMs and additional things like hospitals and pharmacies and like miscellaneous stuff. So you could kind of like go into show all lifestyle necessities, and then you could like kind of have like specific catered things for maybe potential people with mobility issues or something along those lines. And it's kind of like organized in terms of importance. People don't really care that how many subways there exist in that city. It's kind of just along the lines of is transportation available. And I thought about it, and it's kind of like supermarkets are also very necessary, but most of the time people kind of bring along their toothpaste and toothbrush, and they're not home as much. So then I kind of like swapped the order of like, hey, what's pretty much what you would do when you're going on vacation or going to a location? You're probably going to be eating out a lot. First thing is transportation. Second thing is kind of like eating out a lot. Third thing is probably going to be shopping and stuff like that. And now the next thing would probably be like supermarkets, where you would buy stuff like I don't know, like shampoo or something like that. But typically those are already accounted for in the Airbnb listing. Like the host typically gives that out, so you don't really need those things. So that's kind of why I switched to ordering on that based on the importance of what you're actually going to do. Hospitals and pharmacies are a little bit arbitrary. I could easily just change that later on with a little bit more research on what potential things that might be take precedence over those kind of issues. And then kind of like going down to experiences and like filtering by experiences, filtering housings by experiences. If I'm traveling with my mom, I don't really want to have any experiences that are surrounded by nightlife, so I would kind of like check family friendly. The organization is pretty much what I took from Airbnb of how they organize, their categorized their experiences. But then I reordered them in terms of like very broad and general, and then it kind of like narrows down to like landmarks and more special things like specialized things like food tasting or like shopping specifics. So I implemented family friendly right here. Then it shows me one home. So I click on it and it shows me that there's filters applied, and this method is probably the most efficient way, because I was originally thinking about having tabs at the bottom and listing every single filter that's possible. But Airbnb does it this way for a particular reason, because if you have too many filters applied and they're not really related, it's kind of hard to toggle things that aren't as related. So then it's kind of like you would have end up with like a very long infinite horizontal scroll for the users, and it would raise their cognitive load as well as their memory load, because they can't remember the filters they applied. And like certain things like beds, like if I selected two beds and like I unselected, doesn't mean that I don't have any beds. Like certain things like that doesn't really apply. So I understand why they did it this way. So you have the applied filter, and you got this first listing over here. Click on the listing, and now I'm redirected to details about this particular listing. I decided to put lifestyle necessities under amenities as its own subsection. I organized it in the way that it's listed inside the filtering as well. And I took the feedback that Tiki gave me about experiences and stuff like that, and utilizing the map that's already present instead of showing transportation, which is not as relevant, and like kind of showing like a red line that indicates how to get to transportation. People don't really care about that. They just care about like what are the experiences that are surrounding the area that they're trying to book in. And for obvious security reasons and privacy reasons, I actually didn't list out what experiences they particularly are, because you don't really want to have a residential area located, or like giving the address of a kimchi workshop of a grandma's house on here. So it was best to kind of like toggle the experiences and like kind of like browse through a listing and potentially look through homes based on the number of attractions and experiences that are accessible to it. and that's a really cool aspect about it. Another thing is kind of like going down to the local experiences down here, where it's like, TK brought up a good point about like certain landmarks, like at if you're going to Paris or something, you're probably going to go to the Eiffel Tower, right? That's gonna just you just have to do that like once every time you visit, and certain landmarks are there for a reason, and people tend to revisit them every time they go to the city or the country or whatever. So if that's the case, then the first one of local experiences just suggested should always be kind of like a landmark near the area or something that's very predominant to the country, and then based off of that, everything else would kind of be like local experiences that are related to that particular city. And cannibalizing of particular cities based on experiences is an issue. So maybe you could easily talk around maybe having two landmarks and two experiences that are local and whatever or whatnot to kind of have like a mixed blend of like popular cities and unpopular cities. So going back to here, you get this like detailed view, and then you click on this and you get more detailed view. It's like if you're clicking on this, you automatically are probably the type of person that okay, not automatically, but you're probably the type of person that wants to is very meticulous and wants to learn a little bit more about their location. Based on like the lifestyle necessities that are pretty common, based on the user's goal, based on my problem statement, it's kind of be like restaurants and shopping outlets are probably taking precedence over convenience stores, and subways, you would probably already have a subway location or an icon on here by default in red, and then you have your current location, and then you could toggle off specific things that you're looking for, like shopping outlets around the area, restaurants around the area. I just populated these two because they're pretty common, and if I'm looking into more details about a particular location, and I'm going on vacation, after transportation needs have been met, it's kind of like, what is there to do around the area? Is there a lot of places I could eat out around the area? Is there a lot of places I could buy stuff and go shopping around the area? And if those aren't the case, if I am a special case and I need to like have mobility issues or like hospitalization, then I could kind of click on filters and it would bring me up filters, and I could search for lifestyle necessities like hospitals around the area or something like that. I didn't have as much time to work on this page, so I'm probably gonna redo it or kind of enhance it over Thanksgiving break, and then add it to my final presentation. As far as the back button, all these tend to work. There's no real loose ends on here, so definitely, yeah. And then kind of going back to my problem statement, do these features actually solve my problem statement? So when I'm traveling abroad and I'm looking for homes in a set city, I'm trying to maximize my time on vacation and experience new things and interact with the environment. But Airbnb gives me too many generic attractions. I fixed that by giving one or two generic attractions and catering it towards local attractions. Airbnb doesn't give me any context to the homes I'm searching to. It doesn't tell me about lifestyle necessities around the area, like how many shopping malls are there, how many convenience stores, how many how much transportation is available, or like restaurants. That would easily sway my decision between two potential listings. One that has more restaurants and accessibility to shopping malls and more things to do, versus one that doesn't. So that would be very helpful. And also, when I'm trying to get around, it makes more sense that I would choose like a location that has more bus stops or something like that. Airbnb gives me suggested list of experiences that are not very convenient. So in the past, I'm looking through it. It's giving me experiences that are very touristy, that are like several miles or several hours away from the city. So going back to that, catering more half and half local experiences and major tourist attractions in the local area allows me to accommodate these experiences into my schedule more. So these features do, I believe, solve my original problem statement for this niche selection group.